morning. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. I'm Jenny Tutone, the Interim Executive Director here at the Natural History Institute. And before I introduce tonight's speaker, I have a few quick announcements. First off, the restrooms and water fountains are on the other side of that wall. So you go through this hallway right here and keep turning to the right. If you hit the stairs, you've gone too far. And then please leave questions until the end. We'll have time afterward for a little Q&A. And also a reminder to please silence your cell phones.
Good point.
The Natural History Institute has a very full slate of programming this summer. So be sure that you're on our mailing list to receive notifications. And you are all invited to our Leadership Celebration Reception, a toast to legacy, leadership, and community on Saturday, August 9th from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. at the Fairweather Social Club. Join us for a celebratory evening honoring the leadership, vision, and heartfelt dedication of Bob Ellis as he retires from his role as Executive Director. The Natural History Institute is in a season of transition. As we transition to new leadership, we're also transitioning from foundational funding that helped us launch NHI to a model sustained by community support. If you have valued the programs that we offer, like tonight's talk, we invite you to be a part of this next chapter. You can donate online. We have cash boxes in the lobby. I also take checks. Every gift, no matter the size, helps keep our mission alive and thriving. Thank you for being here and for being a part of this growing community. Now it is my pleasure to introduce tonight's speaker, Debbie DeWolf Allen. So for the past 4 years, my entire time at the Natural History Institute, I've had the pleasure of knowing Debbie. On Thursday mornings, you'll find her in our herbarium, carefully transcribing herbarium sheet labels and helping us digitize our collections. And what I find so inspiring about Debbie is that after a career in geology, Debbie didn't stop exploring. She turned her attention to the world of plants in retirement, specifically grasses. It's a beautiful example of how learning doesn't end with a career, it just changes shape. And it's people like Debbie that make me proud of our community. Debbie majored in geology at Indiana University and got her master's degree, and fell in love with the wide open spaces of the West at Geology Field Camp in Montana. She's been a certified master gardener in Harris County, Texas, and Yavapai County, Arizona. And over a dozen years ago, she noticed some interesting grasses and decided to learn how to identify them with the thought of, how hard can it be? Over the last decade, she's been working to make grasses easier for beginners to recognize, and ultimately resulting in her book, Common Grasses of the Central Arizona Highlands, available here tonight. So please give a warm welcome to Debbie Allen with her talk, Arizona Grasses, Why We Are Unique.
So let's see if this is going to work. Get my volume okay? Okay. And wow, all these people are interested in grasses? Really? Come on. The other, oh no, that wasn't what I meant to come for. Okay, so I will be talking about our grasses and why we are unique. Actually, I'll say Arizona and New Mexico are kind of unique. We're kind of paired together in that. And before I get started, I want you to take a look at this cover picture because through the magic of PowerPoint, I typed in my title and they said, boing, here's a good picture for you. And I said, that's perfect. This is orchard grass. And you are going to see orchard grass several times in this presentation, which is kind of nice. So, alrighty, let's see if I can make this go forward. Yes. Okay. So you may have caught the thing that I'm a geologist at heart by training. So there's more geology in here than you'd expect from a grass talk. So the Earth is incredibly old, 4.5 billion years. Our minds can't wrap around 4.5 billion. You think about inches on a football field, not even close. I mean, you can see spiraling down into the deep past. And really, as a geologist, I was most interested in this last part, circling around. That's where life really got going. So that's the last 500 million years. 1/9 of Earth's history is really what's interesting, I think. So another way to look, this slide popped up when I was writing the talk. Well, that's silly. How did time travelers die? Asphyxiation, slightly slower asphyxiation, starvation, eaten by fish. I added the 66 million years ago, hit by a meteor. But I'm going to refer back to this because it actually has a part of the talk. So 4.5 billion years, way too much or time to take in. So we're going to go ahead 4.3 billion. And here we are startling a couple of sauropods in the Jurassic. We all know about the Jurassic, right? That's where all the dinosaurs were and all the cool stuff happened. Well, actually, that's not quite far enough forward. I'm going to have to go forward a little bit further to the late Cretaceous. And Spielberg lumped all the dinosaurs kind of into Jurassic Park. The dinosaurs were here for a really, really long time. So this guy lived closer to us in time than he did to those sauropods in the swamp. So they were incredibly successful, and they filled all the ecologic niches. Well, something different occurred in the Cretaceous that wasn't there in the Jurassic. We got angiosperms, flowering plants. And it's not a mistake that I've got a magnolia here, because magnolias did evolve in the Cretaceous. They were some of the earliest flowering plants. They were so early they were pollinated by beetles because there weren't any bees yet. So beetles would go blopping along on their big open flowers. And they still are, by the way, pollinated by beetles. Okay, so I'm talking about grasses. Grasses are angiosperms. Grasses have flowers. Ah, come on, really? Well, Harry, my husband, and I were out hiking south of Hazley, and we came across, I gotta push the right button here, this plant. I looked over, it's yellow. Wait a minute, I've been here a lot. There's no yellow grass. Well, that is mountain brome, and it's covered with flowers. So I thought, okay, I'll pick it, take it home, and get a proper picture of it. Well, these flowers just showered off. It is so delicate. So, okay, fortunately, Harry was wearing a kind of a neutral shirt and had an iPhone with us. So that is mountain brome. I will be showing an annual brome later on. This is a perennial brome. It's native. It's a desirable, lovely plant. The annual we'll get to later. As I say, it's not so desirable. And then go a little further down the trail. There's another. What's that? It's Kentucky bluegrass. Bet you've never seen Kentucky bluegrass in bloom. So, and then same shirt later in the day. Anyone want to guess what this one is? Do you remember the cover slide? Orchard grass. That's orchard grass. And the other one is orchard grass in western Colorado a month later. So once you start seeing, grasses really do flower, and quite a lot. So we're in Italy in September. Bus stops in the parking lot. Ooh, there's a grass that's in flower. Anyone guess what this is? Bermuda. Jeff Shalau's favorite grass. And there it is, flowering in a parking lot. So, okay, grasses evolved in the Cretaceous. Grasses have flowers. Dinosaurs were in the Cretaceous. Therefore, dinosaurs ate grasses? Maybe. I've seen one paper where he says, yeah, I found grass seeds in a dinosaur coprolite, which is kind of a stretch to find. But grasses really didn't come into their own until much later in a time period called the Miocene. So we're going to have to fast forward to 23 to 5 million years ago. Now, I did my geology in Indiana and then Montana. The Miocene is kind of yesterday. Yeah, okay. Now, if you're a normal human being, the Miocene was a really long time ago. So, Blasford Hill was erupting. Maybe not quite like that, artist's interpretation. But there was a lot of other volcanic activity happening in the Miocene. So if you look around Prescott and Sedona, you'll see a lot of flat-topped hills with kind of gray rock on top that's basalt. That's Miocene basalt that just oozed up through the ground. And if you drive to Phoenix, Sunset Point, a Miocene plateau. Kind of cool. And that's covered with grasses that burn every year, if you hadn't noticed. Okay, so why am I focusing on the Miocene? What made it so important for grasses? Okay, go back to the basics. You remember biology, photosynthesis, magic thing. Grasses or plants snatch carbon dioxide out of the air, water from the ground, and in the presence of sunlight make their food that they need to live on, sugars, and they kick out oxygen. Okay. Now, during the Miocene, at least 60 plants decided independently to try a new method of photosynthesis. Now, photosynthesis has been going on since the Earth was about 1.5 billion years old. It's been going on really, really, really long time. And in fact, the reason we have oxygen in our atmosphere is because of these plants started cranking out oxygen. And initially, remember that second slide, how did time travelers die? Asphyxiation, asphyxiation. There was no oxygen in our atmosphere. But there were these tiny cyanobacteria that were doing photosynthesis and started giving off oxygen, which actually they were anaerobic. It was toxic to them. They wanted it out of there. So this oxygen gradually started building up. And first it built up in the oceans. And there was free iron in the oceans those days. No reason not to be. Oxygen, iron, it oxidized and precipitated out. So if you've heard the Mesabi Range, the Iron Range in Minnesota, that's caused by a great oxygenation event where all these little guys have been producing enough oxygen to change the atmosphere. And if you buy Beth Boyd's book, and if you haven't, it's for sale here on the Geology of Prescott, you'll find we have something around here called banded iron formations, or BIFs. And the banded iron formations formed same way, these little tiny creatures producing oxygen, or the iron settled out and formed banded iron formations. And she was totally frustrated because people would find them and say, is this a meteorite? Is this a meteorite? Is this a meteorite? No, it's a banded iron. No, it's a banded iron. I think in 30 years of teaching, she saw 2 actual meteorites. So everything else was banded iron. So, okay, so this has been going on a really long time. It's changed our atmosphere. And now in the Miocene, these plants said, hey, we got a great idea. We're going to change the way we're doing photosynthesis. So the new photosynthesis takes more energy. That doesn't sound like a winner, does it? Takes an extra step. But takes much less water. So where can you go in the world today where you have a lot of energy in the way of sunlight, but not much water? Well, how about the pampas of Argentina, the savannas of Africa, the Arizona, Australian outback, or right up here, Arizona, New Mexico, down into Mexico. Suddenly, we've got a place where plants can grow that couldn't grow there before. And nature abhors a vacuum, so guess what? They started moving into those areas. So, to talk a little bit about photosynthesis rather than saying the new, the old, or whatever, there are 3 types of photosynthesis. C3. Why is it called C3? The first molecule made in the process has 3 carbon atoms. Okay. Whoops, I just went for... going the wrong way, sorry. Okay. Okay. C4 is the new method. It's warm season grasses, and it is 4 carbon molecules, or 4 carbon atoms. And then we have the CAM, which is crazy complicated, and I can't even pronounce it, but that's the 3rd kind. That and C4 evolved in the Miocene to adapt to the Miocene. And this is kind of summarized of the 250,000 known species of land plants. C3 plants, vast majority, 90%. Original photosynthesis, probably what you're going to see. CAM plants, 7%. I thought, what? And I always thought CAM was cacti, and there can't be 7% cacti. Oh, but it's the epiphytes, the orchids, and the bromeliads also don't have much water. So all these things down in the tropics use it. C4 plants, 3%. Not much, not many plants. 7,000 species. But 3/4 of them are grasses or sedges. And if you look at the other way, 42% of grasses are C4. So grasses have put their bet on C4, hot, dry areas. So where are the C4? Well, you can see southern hot, dry places, hot, dry places, hot, dry places. And I've read that in Arizona, 80% of our grasses are C4, 20% are C3. If you go to Montana, 80% are C3, 20% are C4. Which means if you learn your grasses here and you go to Montana, you won't recognize them. But, so we've got this new area, plants are moving in, and guess what? Nature abhors a vacuum. Somebody is going to want to eat those seeds that are on the grasses. Grasses are wonderful. They've got really nutritious seeds. Songbirds went crazy. They evolved in the Miocene. Rodents, look at all those. Everybody loves eating grass seed. And nature abhors a vacuum. Somebody's got to eat these guys. Hawks evolved. Most hawk species evolved in the Miocene. And you have snakes who adapted to the new prey. So all of a sudden we have whole ecosystems because of this new C4. Well, what about, when I think grasses, I always think of grazers. I think about horses and cattle and such. Well, grass is really tough to eat the blades. They are not very digestible, and C4 grasses are really, really tough and hard on teeth. So I don't know, I remember in junior high talking about we start with the horse evolution, and we can show you how horses evolved. And they were teeny little dog-sized things, and then they got bigger, and they got more and more. In the Miocene, there were 13 different horse species. And guess who won? The current equus with the biggest teeth and the most enamel, so it was best equipped to eat grasses. So I know I'm pretending that grasses were totally the reason for all this stuff to happen. I think you could make a pretty good argument on the evolution of horses that grasses were dominant in why they evolved the way they did. So think about Prescott for a minute. C3 grasses, cool season, start growing 40 to 45 degrees, grow best at 70 to 75 to 85. 40 to 45, we can get that in February. We can get it in January. Grow best, 70 to 85. June, too hot. Maybe May, okay. Warm season grasses start growing 60 to 65 degrees, grow best 90 to 95 degrees. So we have two totally distinct seasons of our grasses. That the cool season, they're done. You could go out now and you won't find much of anything in the cool season grasses. Warm season, yeah, they're getting going. This is their time to shine. So this is a C3 grass flowering June 8th, C4 grass flower September 1st. So we have a dichotomy of our grasses. And if you go out trying to identify a grass, look at the time of year and see if it's a cool season or a warm season grass. Okay, so I am going to go through a year of our grasses, and I'm going to tell you some stories about grasses, because I really don't care about naming them. I'd rather hear stories about them. And this first one, cheatgrass, Bromus tectorum. Cheatgrass is either one of the most amazing, successful, adaptive plants ever, or one of the worst menaces that has changed our country significantly. Over 100 million acres of the high plains has become a cheatgrass monoculture. Wow. And it's just, there's a whole USDA article about it, and it's just, it first came into this country, 1850, was in Denver, and then it started taking over. So how does a little annual cool season grass take over the West? Well, you can see, it comes up very early, and it's fluffy. It's got a lot of seeds, drops those seeds, and then it dries out. And this makes great, great tinder. So when the fires start rolling through, it burns. And grass can burn. It's not a problem because grass grows from its top of its roots. Light burns doesn't bother it, grazing doesn't bother it, mowing doesn't bother it. But when it burns, it's going to take out all the C4 grasses that are just getting going, and that's it for their crop for that year. Well, repeat that a few times, and eventually, this is what's left. And I talked to a raptor person one time, and I said, what do you think about cheatgrass? And she said, oh, it's awful, because the hawks come, and they see these big fields covered with grass, and they think there's going to be a lot of mice running around them. No, the seeds are gone. They're buried in the ground. It's barren. There's nothing there. So it's very bad, but darn, what a great adaptation, I guess. Now, red brome on the other side here, a little bit lower elevation. We do have red brome around here. It's not as common, but same sort of thing. Takes over. But cheatgrass is the one that's really taken over. In fact, one person said, cheatgrass has made the biggest change since the Ice Age, which has got to be pretty significant. All right, so let's move on. Another March grass comes up very early, Kentucky bluegrass. We all know Kentucky bluegrass. And I'm always picture these beautiful horses with their foals running through the paddocks. Well, we have our own equivalent. It's called mutton grass. So you can picture those little sheep with their babies running. Nah, probably not. Mutton grass, the problem with mutton grass, it's adapted to our dry climate. It sends its roots down deep. So it's a bunch grass. So you'll never make a yard out of mutton grass. The bluegrass has rhizomes. It makes a lovely turf. So that's our POA, our native POA, and the imported POA. Moving on to April, and we're going to look at the hordeums, the barleys. You've all seen this guy downtown. Whoops. Pops up between the sidewalks or next to buildings. Sometimes it could be 18 inches tall, sometimes it's a little short. It's not wall barley, it's mouse barley. And Kelly Allred, who wrote the book on the grasses of New Mexico, really likes to get into terminology, and he says, no, Marinum comes from mouse. So okay, it's kind of a harmless, but it's easy to identify. How about the middle one? Foxtail, and there are actually several plants that are called foxtail. But I think this is the one most people are talking about when vets talk about it, because foxtail has really sharp, stiff awns, those are pokey-outy things. And so if a dog noses by, they'll get stuck in its lips and eyes, any of the soft tissue, and it gets infected, and it's ugly, ugly. And so, and I have read, oh, you can buy this lovely grass, which is so pretty. Don't buy it. And if you do have a pet and you see it by the trail, keep them away from it. And finally, we have the common barley, Hordeum vulgare, vulgare meaning common. And you can see this is one of the earliest grains that was grown by humans. About 9,000 years ago, they were growing barley. But it looks very similar to wheat and rye. But if you go by any of the old farmhouses or places that have been colonized, you'll find this popping up there. And no, if you're going to grow a grass for food, you want to get big seeds. So the barley are much bigger seeds than these wild varieties. However, that said, all grass seeds, as far as I know, are edible. The problem is they're encased by the glooms and lemons, and you have to get rid of that covering that's protecting the seed. So you have to thresh your grass, pound it, and then to get rid of these coverings, you winnow it. So if you picture back in the day and some woman in Africa with a basket tossing it up in the air and the seeds going up and down and stuff blowing away, that's winnowing the covering away from the seed. But once you do that, it's edible. So great source of food. And by the way, grass blades are not edible. We do not have the digestive enzymes to digest grass blades. So I read, sometimes you'll find starving people with grass, and people who have starved with grass in their mouths. It does nothing for you. Comes in, goes out. So don't bother eating grass blades, but the seeds, yes. Okay, another April. Wild oats. This is just kind of fun. You've all heard of sowing your wild oats. Don't sow your wild oats. Well, you don't want to sow wild oats because they contaminate the field, actually. And Avena fatua, they're fatuous oats. And according to Kelly Allred, that the fortune tellers used to take those long, nope, here we go, long awns, put them in the water, and they kind of spin around, and they'd say, this will tell you your fortune. These are legs of an Egyptian spider. So we will tell you all your fortune. The middle one, this is kind of fun, jointed goat grass. The only place I've ever seen it is in Williamson Valley, because it's a contaminant in wheat. So horses can poop it out. And look at that stack. I mean, once you identify this, got it, jointed goat grass, can't go wrong. The seeds are just stacked one on top of each other. And for your trivia, agelops is the longest word in the English language with the letters in alphabetical order, if you consider that English. And finally, our buddy, orchard grass, dactylus, fingers, glomerata, glom together. So I kind of like that name. And it's grown, it's a nice pasture grass. On our trip in Italy in September, there was a guy from Western Washington and said, oh yeah, we're farmers, what do you grow? Grass. So, oh boy, what grass do you grow? We grow orchard grass. And of course I blurted out, oh, Dactylus glomerata. And he looked at me like I was nuts. But yeah, it's grown as a crop, and it is very allergenic. In fact, most of the cool season grasses are allergenic. The warm season grasses, hey, I'm not going to release my precious bodily fluids, so I'm keeping them to myself. May, this is kind of the end of the cool season grass. Out hiking, and somebody said, oh, Debbie, what's this grass? And I thought, oh no, it's got really long awns. Picked it, got back to the car, and it went boing. Say, well, that's kind of cool. Look at how it just boinged up like that. And it's actually called needle and thread, and I think you can see it better on this guy, which is not quite the same, but it's got a very sharp seed with a callus on it, then it drills into the ground. Clever. And I thought the Mexican feathergrass was going to be like the needle and thread, so I was really excited, fluffed up. It is the prettiest grass. So if you're out in May and you see something with really long awns, pick them, because it might be fun. Okay, June. June is hot. June is dry. June is the time when the C4 grasses should get going, but C4, they really do like a little water. But this guy, purple threon, it's fine. And if you go to Willow Lake, start at the dog park and walk around, it's all over the place. It decided to move next to our driveway. It's happy. And it's called a threon because it's got 3 awns. So that helps identify it. You can see these are the sticky out things from each seed head. So I liken purple threon to juncos. Now, if any of you are birders, you know that juncos, years ago, people would very carefully find all these different species of juncos and check them off their list. There was the Oregon junco and the pink-sided, and well, then they got DNA studies and they're all variants of the same slate gray junco. So yes, there are in members, but they're kind of all the same. Same thing with the purple threon. There are 7 different subspecies, but that makes it easy because you only have to identify this guy. July. You guys know these 2. 1, Bermuda grass, Jeff's favorite. and hairy crabgrass. They look kind of the same from the top. The leaves are totally different. Bermuda grass is a perennial, and Bermuda grass was called the shield of India, the preserver of nature, because it provided milk and cheese to the people. I mean, they don't kill the cattle, but it provided food. So to them, Bermuda grass was important. We lived in Oklahoma. Bermuda grass is what you grew. It invaded your gardens. There's nothing you can do about it. It's got rhizomes, it's got stolons, it's got seeds. It's a problem. Crabgrass, actually, the Eastern Europeans farmed crabgrass in the Midwest for the grain. They also grow it for cattle feed. But yeah, it's they were used to eating tiny, tiny seeds like that, which is kind of a pain to process. And then they discovered wheat and said, oh, wait a minute, this is better. And if you go to Africa, there is a grain called fonio, F-O-N-I-O. And fonio is a digitaria. So, yeah, these are edible. Everybody knows weeping lovegrass. If you don't, it's tall and it weeps. There's a book on grasses written about the 1950s, says it's only in Pima County. Well, guess what? It's everywhere. And it sends roots really, really deep, so the highway department likes it to stabilize slopes. And you're allowed to identify this guy from your car. Oh yeah, that's weeping lovegrass. Or if you really want to impress people, do the Eragrostis curvula. We did have one clump in our front yard, and one winter it made it to -5. It killed it. So there's hope if you want to get rid of it and it's really cold. August, everybody loves the bootalulas, the grama grasses, because they're so easy to recognize. We got the two different types, the type with the eyelash and the type with the seeds on either side of the stem. And I know sometimes it looks like all the seeds are on one side. That's because for some silly reason, the little pedicels that hold them say, hey, let's all go to the other side. Both of them have variations. You can see that Matt Grama in the middle is the cutest little thing. Worthless, it's an annual, but it's cute. And side oats also has quite a few different types. September. Okay, I got to do this because feather finger grass, you got to do your fingers up that. It's also called windmill grass. It's very common around here. It can be 5 inches tall if it's coming through a crack in your driveway. It can be waist high if you're seeing it in an abandoned field. Easy to identify though because of those fingers. And October. Two fun ones, two fuzzies. Cane beard grass. Cane beard grass as a very coarse native grass, good forage when young, not so good when old, and you will see that everywhere around town. If you're driving up Senator Highway, if you're driving up to Dewey Humboldt, you're driving over Mingus, you'll see this white fuzzy next to the road, and you are allowed also to say, oh yes, that's cane beard grass. I give you permission. It might be something else, but that's probably what it is. And nobody's going to know it. The other one, I don't see as much, but there is a clump near Goldwater Lake, little blue stem. And I got so excited when I saw this because I thought, I've heard of big blue stem, the tall grass prairie, the Midwestern, guy on a horseback, the grass as high as his hat. Well, that's big blue stem. Little blue stems, short grass prairie. So it's not nearly as tall. But in the fall, it turns this beautiful maroon, rusty red color. So it's They do sell that as an ornamental, and I can't say much for the flowers, but yeah, okay. It's kind of cool when you can identify something. And, then we start all over. But before I stop, I have 2 quotes for you. And this was from the New York Times. Imagine the earth without grasses. There would be no lawns or meadows, no prairies, no savannas or steppes, no wheat fields or rice paddies, no sugar cane, no sheep, rhinoceros, kangaroos, or horses, no people. We live in an age of grasses. And the other one is from Charles Darwin about identifying grasses. If you've ever been frustrated, who hasn't been? He says, in 1855, I have just made out my first grass. Hurrah, hurrah. I must confess that fortune favors the bold, for as good luck would have it, it was the easy Anthoraxanthum odoratum, which is sweet vernal grass. Nevertheless, it is a great discovery. I never expected to make out a grass in all my life. So hurrah, it has done my stomach surprising good. And if you know anything about Darwin, you know that after the beagle, he had terrible intestine problems for the rest of his life. So identifying that grass did his stomach good. And that's what I got.
We have time for some questions. I'm going to pass around the microphone for the live stream folks.
I'm curious what your take is on the loss of all of our grasses by growing houses out of the land, and what does it disturb in terms of the growth, the runoff of water, and all of those sorts of things? What kind of impact does it have on our sustainability?
Well, of course, grasses are great for preventing runoff. So I'd say fire, when we have a forest fire, if you've ever seen the water running off after a forest fire, it's black and there's nothing to stop it. So building, of course, yeah, it gets rid of grasses, but then again, people plant grasses around, so it's...
I'm wondering if you've seen that series, The History of Life on Our Planet, narrated by Morgan Freeman.
No, I don't think so.
It's really worth watching. It's 8 episodes, but in that they show that grass was a fairly recent life form, and since we tend to think of grass as a very simple life form, why was it take it so long to evolve? Why is it such a recent life
Well, it
form?
was to figure out the C4 adaptation, I think, because that was the magic. And the Miocene is pretty recent. And because of that, it could spread everywhere. But yeah, it didn't really take off. It was there with the dinosaurs, but it really didn't take off. And why did this happen now? Probably because you have to have the landforms with hot, dry areas. So if our hot, dry areas disappear, I suspect all the C4 plants will disappear too, which will hurt grasses.
Thank you. Debbie, we're up in Chino Valley and we often heard the term Chino grass. It must be a kind of a nickname. Can you identify that?
It's a grama, a blue grama.
Blue grama?
Blue grama, I can, you know, this guy, oop, one too many, that guy. And that comes from, the term comes from Mexico. But yeah, there are a couple of signs there that say it's named because this was Chino blue grama. Now there are a couple of other grama grasses. There was a black grama, which is, it's kind of not as neat and orderly looking, and you'll see it around there. It actually has stolons. It spreads more by stolons than by seed, and the cattle absolutely love it. So apparently New Mexico was covered by black grama, and then the cattle came and ate it. And because it spreads by stolons, they stomped it, and it's now they go back to blue grama.
You mentioned the hot weather to get things going. Does that imply that there's an activation energy involved in the biochemistry that gets these things going?
Yeah, I think there is. There's got to be. It's chemistry.
What would be the time period that would be native grass? And are there any native millets in the United States?
Yes, there are native millets. I think millet is a warm season. Our native grass, we don't have that many cool season native grasses. So we've got the mutton grass is a nice cool season. We've got, and that's a native. And that brome, the perennial brome that I showed you flowering, that is a native grass. We have several native bromes that are nice. Nice. Well, yes.
I planted seeds from the native garden. They're called sheep fescue.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the same as mutton grass?
No,
No.
it's a different one, and I don't think it's native. Maybe it is. They told you it was native, it probably is then. But yeah, fescues, they're kind of like poas, similar. And and there are some really cute little ones that I understand the rabbits love them. So, if you have rabbits. Okay,
We have one up on the balcony.
holler.
From the peanut gallery. I'm wondering about shoulder season, those off seasons where C3 and C4 both may be prevalent, and if there's any competition for nutrients and how they coexist. Do they coexist in those shoulder seasons pretty well, or is it kind of a tip?
Oh, well, if you go out.
Debbie, if you could repeat part of the question within the answer.
Sorry
Thank you.
about that. Yes, is there a shoulder season for grasses where C3 and C4 are together? Actually, not much. I mean, if you go out in May, you are not going to see many cool season grasses. They're gone to seed, they're done. Now, the cheatgrass brome, he does the clever trick. He seeds early, and in the winter, he sucks up all the water he can get. So that's another way he can outcompete the warm season grasses, so that puts them at a disadvantage. And there's another, I read an odd article about field ants. And ants, some say they don't really like those long awns on that, so they'll select for native grasses instead. So that has nothing to do with your question, but I know I'm full of trivia.
Last question, anybody? Nope. Well, let's give a big thank you to Debbie. And we have a hat for her.
Thank you so much.
And also a reminder that her book is for sale at the Natural History Institute, so you can buy it tonight. Debbie's here, you could sign it. So.
Yeah. And hey, and I would highly recommend Beth Boyd's book on the geology of Prescott. If you haven't bought it, it's awesome. And Harry took photos in that too. So, all righty.
Thank you all for joining us.